Hi, this is Cheating Wife. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story. Your support motivates me to share even more real stories from our life. And don't forget to leave a comment. I'll be really happy to read your thoughts. I know how the video will end, and that should be the last thing I ever wanted to hear, but somehow it's the first thing that keeps me awake at night. I know the face I'll see in the final scene as if it's already been carved into memory, and that knowledge feels like a verdict and a question at once. I will tell you everything that led to that moment, but not yet. For now, I can only give you the hitch in my chest and the whisper of a choice I don't know if I should make. I promise the ending is not neat, and it is not clean, and it will hurt in ways I could not have predicted. I promise too that every lie, every small omission, and every silenced confession will add weight to that final second. I will start at the beginning because the beginning taught me how fragile truth could be. I met her in early autumn and we moved quickly in ways people who still trust the world will always call reckless. I met her when she smelled like coffee and dust and a new chapter. I met her when she said my name like it had been waiting on her tongue. I met her when she told me a version of the past that fit easily into the life I wanted to build. It felt safe to believe that version, so I did. The first few dates were a blur of nervous laughter and half-finished sentences that filled the gaps we both pretended not to notice. She laughed at my stupid jokes and rolled her eyes at my worst ones, and when she reached for my hand, it felt like permission to keep going. We spent hours walking under streetlights and we traded playlists and secrets like they were currency. I remember thinking, foolishly, that honesty was the baseline of anything worth keeping. She moved into her house, and 1 month later she moved into mine. The logistics were absurd in their efficiency. Boxes, keys exchanged, 2 toothbrushes, a shared garbage can within 48 hours. I asked myself sometimes whether speed disguises truth. She told me things in small packets, the way people do when they are trying not to bury something too deep. "It ended a year before I met you," she said one night over cold pizza, her voice so casual I almost missed the meaning. "He was married," she added later, as if this label should be enough to make the story resolved and distant. I nodded then, a man trying to be modern and forgiving and maybe a little proud of himself for not recoiling. When she told me she had blocked his number, I believed that too. Weeks passed and the small things in our shared life began to feel less like coincidences and more like stitches. She texted her friends and sent me pictures and fell asleep with her head on my chest, and I started telling myself that people do strange things when they are human. I told myself that everyone has a shadow, and loving someone means learning the shape of it. Nearly a year into our relationship, the thing that had been anonymous in the corners of my mind became a direct knock at the door. I saw his name on a package, on a label she had forgotten to tear off when she handed me a jacket to hang. I don't know what made my fingers open my phone that night. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was fear. The messages were there, a thread that stretched backwards and then looped forward with dates that did not match her story. She had told me a year, and the timestamps said otherwise. They said something that landed like a punch. The last message was dated 2 months before we met. I remember the way the world narrowed to the rectangle of light in my palm. I remember the room humming with the refrigerator and my heart doing its own work of betrayal. I called her name and she came into the kitchen like she belonged there. "What is it?" she asked, and the question was simple and true, and it made my throat close. "Who is Daniel?" I said, and even asking the name felt like permission to open a wound. She went still and then sat down, and the apartment sounded very loud. "You found something," she said. "I found the messages," I told her. "He was married," she said again, as if the repetition might make it less sharp. "You told me it was a year ago," I said, and the sentence scraped like a stone. "I thought it was," she said, and then the confession came in pieces like someone trying to scoop up fragile glass with their hands. "It ended before we met," she said quietly. "I didn't want to cause trouble," she said. "I didn't want to ruin what we had." The more she spoke, the less her words matched the timeline on my phone. She started to cry, and the sound was soft and immediate and perhaps sincere. I cannot tell you for sure. She said she'd been ashamed to tell me the truth and that she feared losing me more than being honest. She said the affair had been the hole she fell into after a series of small bad decisions and loneliness. She said his name like a bruise. I wanted to be angry with the man she had slept with, but the anger with him felt small compared to the numbness I felt toward her. It was not the sex itself that wrecked me. It was the calculus of me in it, that she had decided what I should and should not know. She told me she had blocked him only after we started talking seriously, that she had left it on while she sorted her life out, and that she had deleted messages in fitful, terrified spurts. She said again and again, "I am sorry." I stood there and I listened, and I held the phone like evidence and like an accusation. "Why didn't you tell me before we moved in?" I asked, partly because I wanted to hear why and partly because I needed something to say. "I thought it was over," she said. "I thought I had moved past it. But the dates..." I started and let the sentence hang. She reached across the table and took my hand and said, "I know I lied. I know I hid it. I am sorry. I didn't think you would understand." She told me her life had been a mess when it happened, that she had been lost and found and broken, and that the married man's presence was a cruel kind of comfort. She told me she had cut contact because she finally understood that what she wanted was something else, and she pointed at me like I was the answer she had been fumbling toward. "I love you," she said, and the phrase was both a plea and a shield. I wanted to believe her, but the word love had new luggage now, a weight that made it look different in the light. In the weeks after the discovery, our life became rehearsed. Apologies, tears, attempts at reassurances. She saw a therapist, and I read articles about trauma and repair and how lying is sometimes a survival instinct for people who are still injured. She told me how badly she had been treated in the past, how the affair had come from a place of wanting to be wanted, not from malice. I was ashamed, she told me, and shame makes people hide. I listened and I tried to measure the things she said against the pictures on my phone. There were nights we lay awake and she would whisper my name and I would catalog the small kindnesses she had offered in the months before the reveal. When she apologized, it was sometimes like a bomb and sometimes like salt. I found myself swinging from tenderness to cold assessment like a pendulum I could not stop. Friends offered flippant advice and some offered quiet counsel. "If she lied about that, what else is she lying about?" one said over beers. "You need to decide what you can live with," another told me, always practical and a little tired of my rumination. I started keeping notes about when she said what and the dates they conflicted with, a ridiculous ledger that made me feel less helpless. I would trace back texts and reconstruct timelines like an investigator who did not want to be, because knowledge felt like the only way to keep the ground from shifting under me. Sometimes I would imagine telling the married man's wife what had happened. The idea of it felt violent and righteous and also empty. Violence would not fix what had been broken between us. She begged me not to because it could affect the man's job, because it could ruin lives beyond ours, because she was terrified of collateral damage. "If you tell her," she said once in a voice that trembled, "it will blow up more than both of us." And yet, when she finally said it was okay for me to tell the wife, I felt both relief and something else that looked a lot like dread. "If you want to tell her, I won't stop you," she said one morning, very small as she made tea. "I just can't be the one to ruin another person's life. Not like that," she said. I typed a message, my fingers clumsy, words that tried to be clean and direct. "Hi, I need to tell you something difficult about your husband." I wrote and then deleted it 3 times. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat. I wrote down facts, nothing judgmental, nothing inflammatory, and yet the act of writing felt like stepping off a cliff. "Do you think she deserves to know?" my friend asked when I showed him the draft in a sleepy haze at 2 in the morning. "I don't know if anyone deserves this," I said, and even my own answer sounded thin. There is a particular ache in deciding whether to inflict pain for the sake of truth. Is honesty always the kinder choice? Is there an ethical line between transparency and cruelty? These academic questions turned visceral when I imagined the mail icon on my phone turning red with unread messages from a woman who might need facts to decide the shape of her life. I pictured her in a kitchen like ours, perhaps with a coffee mug, perhaps with a child asleep in another room, perhaps at her job about to read words that would reconfigure everything. And I pictured my girlfriend, who was now in our bed, sobbing into her pillow at the thought of her world coming apart again. "If you send it," she said that night when the draft had sat too long in my phone, "it will be you who sets a chain reaction in motion." Her voice was pleading and tired, and the argument had the logic of someone trying to protect a once broken thing. I thought about the married man's wife, and I thought about the moral compass I used to believe I had. I thought about what it means to be angry at someone who lied and whether anger gives anyone the right to become executioner. Sometimes in the dark, I would rehearse walking up to the wife and saying everything plainly and feel a brief, strange relief. Other times, I would imagine the woman's fury and grief and feel like my fists would curl with a hurt I had no right to claim as my own. The more time I spent in this limbo, the more the edges of our life were tea. The message on my phone felt like a ticking bomb, and I couldn't shake the sensation that every second I delayed was a second that made me complicit. Her voice had been calm, almost eerily calm, but underneath that calmness was a truth that terrified me. She already knew something. She didn't call by accident. She didn't stumble across me randomly. She had found a thread, and now she was pulling. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone, replaying her words again and again. "Can you tell me what you know?" That question echoed in my head. It wasn't just curiosity. It was desperation hidden under politeness. It was the plea of someone whose world was already shaking and who needed confirmation that she wasn't losing her mind. I thought about deleting the voicemail, pretending I had never heard it. I thought about lying to her the way my girlfriend had lied to me. But that thought made my stomach twist. If I did nothing, I was protecting the man who had destroyed her trust. If I spoke, I would be the detonator of her pain. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, my girlfriend's arm draped across my chest, her breathing steady and oblivious. I felt like I was holding two lives in my hands, and no matter what I chose, something would break. By morning, I had convinced myself that honesty was the only thing left I had. I opened my phone, pulled up the number from the voicemail, and typed a short message. "I got your call. Yes, I know something. Can we talk?" The reply came almost instantly. "Please, can we meet?" Not on the phone. My hands shook. Meeting her felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. But hadn't that line already been crossed by the lies that brought us here? I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop 2 towns over. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. When I told my girlfriend I had errands that day, the lie burned on my tongue. For the first time, I understood how easily lies slipped into the spaces between truths. The coffee shop was quiet when I walked in. She was sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "Are you?" she began as I approached. "Yes," I said quickly. "I'm the one who got your voicemail." She nodded, her lips trembling just slightly. "Thank you for meeting me." I sat down, my pulse hammering in my ears. "I don't even know how to start this. Just tell me the truth," she said. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice cracked on the last word. So I did. I told her everything I knew. I told her about the messages, the dates, the timeline that didn't match the story I'd been told. I told her that the affair had ended only 2 months before I met my girlfriend. I didn't exaggerate, I didn't try to soften it. I just gave her the facts. Her hands shook as she listened. Sometimes she would close her eyes, like she was bracing herself against waves crashing over her. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "I knew it. I knew something was wrong, but he made me feel crazy for suspecting." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Sorry for her. Sorry for me. Sorry for all of it. She let out a bitter laugh. "Don't apologize. You're the first person who's been honest with me in a long time." That sentence lodged itself in my chest like a shard of glass. Honesty had become so rare in this story that even simple truth sounded like salvation. We talked for nearly an hour. She asked questions, some I could answer, some I couldn't. When I left, she thanked me. Her voice was steadier now, but her eyes looked like a battlefield. Driving home, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because I had told the truth. Heavier because now there was no way back. When I walked through the door, my girlfriend was waiting. "Where were you?" she asked casually, but her eyes searched mine. "Just errands." I lied again, and it tasted worse this time. For the next few days, things felt strange. My girlfriend seemed on edge, like she could sense something was shifting. She asked if I was okay, and I gave her half smiles and said I was fine. But inside, I was a storm. Then, 3 nights later, the explosion came. My girlfriend's phone buzzed on the counter while she was in the shower. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it, but the name that flashed across the screen froze me. Her name. The wife. The message preview read, "I know everything. Don't contact me or him again." My chest tightened. The truth had reached her fully now, and the bridge was burning behind us. When my girlfriend came out of the shower, I was sitting at the table with her phone in front of me. She froze. "What are you doing?" "She knows," I said flatly, showing her the message. Her face drained of color. "Did you?" "Yes." I cut her off. I told her. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. You actually did it?" "I had to," I said. She deserved to know. My girlfriend shook her head, tears spilling instantly. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This could ruin everything." "Everything?" I snapped. "You mean his job? His marriage? What about mine? What about the trust you shattered when you lied to me?" She sobbed, collapsing into a chair. "I was trying to protect us. I was trying to protect what we had." "By lying?" I demanded. "By hiding? That's not protection. That's betrayal." The fight that followed was volcanic. Words thrown like knives, accusations hurled across the room. She begged for forgiveness, but all I could hear was the echo of her lies. That night, she slept in the guest room. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the relationship could survive the wreckage. The days that followed were fragile. She tried to reach me with small gestures, making coffee, cooking dinner, touching my arm, but every touch felt like a reminder of what she'd hidden. And yet, despite my anger, I still loved her. That was the cruelest part. Love doesn't vanish just because trust does. I caught myself remembering the good moments, the laughter, the walks, the nights we spent talking until dawn. And I wondered, was I willing to let all of that die because of a lie? Or was the lie too big to ever recover from? We went to therapy together. The counselor listened patiently as we spilled our pain across the room. My girlfriend admitted she had been terrified of losing me, so terrified that she thought deception was safer than honesty. "She's traumatized," the counselor said gently. "It doesn't excuse the lie, but it explains why she clung to it." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe people could make awful choices out of fear, not malice. But every time I tried, the memory of that message thread burned in my mind. Weeks passed. Slowly, painfully, we tried to rebuild. But rebuilding required me to put down the ledger I'd been keeping in my head, and I wasn't sure I could. Then something happened that shifted everything again. One evening, as we were eating dinner, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, too quickly. My stomach knotted. "Who is it?" I asked. "No one," she said, shoving the phone face down on the table. I reached across, flipped it over, and saw the name. His, the married man. My blood ran cold. "Why is he contacting you?" She stammered. I don't know. I didn't respond. I swear. But the damage was done. The wound I'd been trying to stitch reopened instantly. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loud against the floor. "I can't do this. I can't keep wondering if you're telling me the whole truth. I can't keep living in suspicion." She burst into tears, begging me not to give up. "I love you. Please, don't let him ruin what we have." But in that moment, it wasn't him who was ruining us. It was the lies, the secrecy, the shadow he still cast over her and, by extension, over me. I left the house that night, driving aimlessly until the sky turned dark. I parked in an empty lot and sat in silence, staring at the steering wheel, wondering if love was enough to outweigh betrayal. The truth is, I didn't know the answer, but I knew this. The story wasn't over yet. And the ending, the one I hinted at in the beginning, was coming closer with every choice I made. I didn't go home that night. I sat in the car until dawn painted the sky gray, and even then I couldn't bring myself to turn the key and drive back. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls, messages, all from her. I couldn't look at them. Every vibration felt like another reminder that I was tethered to a story I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of anymore. When the sun finally rose, I drove not home, but to a friend's place. He opened the door in his pajamas, his face scrunched in confusion. "Man, what happened?" he asked. I shook my head, collapsing onto his couch. "It's all falling apart." He didn't push for details right away. He just sat with me, the kind of silence only close friends can offer without it feeling heavy. Eventually, I told him everything. The affair, the lies, the wife, the therapy, and now him reaching out again. My friend whistled low. "That's a mess." "Yeah?" I muttered, burying my face in my hands. "I don't know if I can do this anymore." He leaned back. "Do you love her?" The question punched me in the chest. "Yes," I said instantly, "but I don't know if that's enough." "Sometimes it's not," he said gently. "Sometimes love and trust aren't the same thing." His words lingered with me the rest of the day. When I finally went home that evening, the house felt different. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like it was just walls containing tension. She rushed to me the second I walked in, eyes swollen from crying. "Please," she begged, "don't leave me. Don't let this destroy us." "I can't do this if he's still in the picture," I said firmly. "I need you to cut him out completely. No messages, no contact, nothing." "I will," she promised. "I swear. I'll change my number if I have to." For a while, she kept that promise. She blocked him again, deleted old contacts, even showed me her phone voluntarily. It was as if she understood that every action had to be proof, not just words. But trust isn't something you rebuild overnight. Every time her phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every time she was late from work, my mind raced. Suspicion became a shadow living in our house. We kept going to therapy. We kept talking, sometimes late into the night, sometimes through clenched teeth. She kept insisting she was done with that chapter of her life. She told me again and again how much she loved me, how much she wanted a future with me. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to believe her. We planned a small trip together, just a weekend getaway. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help. Maybe being away from the house where all the lies lived would let us remember what we once had. The first day was almost perfect. We laughed again, genuinely laughed. We walked by the lake, held hands, kissed under the stars. For the first time in months, I felt like us again. But the second night, everything cracked open. She fell asleep early, her phone on the nightstand. I told myself not to look. I told myself I had to trust her, but the temptation was too strong. My hands moved before my brain could stop them. I opened her phone. There it was, a new message from an unknown number. But the words hit me like ice. "I miss you. Please answer." My stomach dropped. I scrolled, and my heart shattered. It was him. He had found another way to contact her, and worse, she had responded. Short replies, but replies nonetheless. "Stop. Don't message me anymore." But she had responded. She hadn't told me. She hadn't shown me. It didn't matter that her answers were rejections. What mattered was the secrecy, the silence, the choice she made to hide it instead of telling me. I sat there in the dim light of the hotel room, staring at her sleeping form. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward. In that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. I would never fully trust her again. The foundation was cracked beyond repair. The next morning, I confronted her. "He's still reaching out," I said, showing her the messages. Her face went pale. I didn't respond. "Well, I only told him to stop. That's it. I didn't want to upset you." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking with fury and despair. "Why did you hide it?" She broke down sobbing. "Because every time I try to fix things, I make it worse. I was afraid you'd leave if I told you. I thought I could handle it on my own." Her words rang hollow. Fear had been her excuse since the beginning. Fear had led her to lie, to hide, to betray. And fear had destroyed us. I packed my bag in silence. She clung to me, begging me not to go. Please, we can fix this. Don't throw everything away. But deep down, I knew it was already gone. Love was still there, burning painfully, but trust, the glue that held love together, was dust. I drove home alone. The house was empty when I arrived, but it felt lighter somehow. Lonely, but lighter. In the weeks that followed, we spoke less and less. She sent long messages, apologies, promises, declarations of love. I read them, sometimes I even cried reading them, but I didn't reply. One evening, I sat down and wrote my own message. Not to her, to the wife. I don't know if this helps you, but I ended things with her. I couldn't live with the lies. I hope you find peace, whatever that looks like. I never got a reply. Maybe she didn't need one. Maybe she had her own journey to walk. As for me, I started mine. I went back to therapy alone this time. I talked about betrayal, about love, about why we cling to people who hurt us. I learned that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. Months passed. The ache softened. The anger dulled. I began to breathe easier, sleep deeper. And then one day, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about her in a week. That was the day I knew I was healing. Looking back now, the lesson feels brutal but clear. Love without trust is just a cage. You can decorate it, you can pretend it's safe, but sooner or later, the bars will show. I told you at the beginning that the ending wasn't neat, that it wasn't clean. And it isn't. There are no winners here, only survivors. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the truth will always find its way out. And when it does, you have to decide whether to cling to the wreckage or let go and swim to shore. I chose to let go. That's how my story ends. Not with revenge, not with repair, but with freedom. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.